welcome. It's Chris from ChristopherHall.com. Welcome to the next episode. It's episode 13 of the podcast, where we're going to be discussing and working through negative emotions are key to well-being, which is not the normal headline you might find. You might think we need to be positive, but I've always been a firm believer in everything has its place and has its purpose, and that we can use everything to our greatest and best advantage. And I believe this for negative emotions as well. Because what you do find is that many people, coaches, trainers, or even therapists, they might say to try and get rid of negative emotions, or try and sort of negate them, or try and get away from negative people, or whatever it might be. But I like to use either these emotions or use negative people to my best advantage. And we'll come on to what those types of or how we might be able to cope with those types of people or emotions. We'll come to that towards the end, once we've gone through the main bulk of the podcast. And what we're going to be talking about is an article that I read in Scientific American by Tori Rodriguez, who's a psychotherapist, and it's on or from May the 1st, 2013. So if you do want to look at it, you do want to look it up, just go type into Google Scientific American, Tori Rodriguez, negative emotions are key to well-being, and you can read through it. Now what I've done is I've pulled out 11 points from it in 3 different parts, and we're going to work through that, and I'll just sort of summarize it and help you possibly make a little bit more sense of it. But before we get onto that, just quickly mention my social channels, which are on the screen. You've got Twitter, which is at Christopher Hole. You've got Facebook, which is Christopher Hole Training. And you've got Instagram, which is Christopher Hole. Please do come along, like and follow. It'd be great to answer any questions that you might have and share more information with you. Alternatively, you can come to the website, which is christopherhole.com/join, where you can sign up to the free monthly newsletter, which is just health and fitness content that we try and cover in every sort of subject of it. So it could be exercise, it could be nutrition, it could be something like this, which is more sort of the psychology of health and well-being or health and fitness. So we try and cover as much as we can. Again, it's all in video content, so we try and keep it as interactive as possible. So yeah, please do come along. It'd be great again to share the information with you. So back to today's podcast, where we're covering negative emotions are key to well-being. Now, again, as I mentioned, I've taken this from an article in Scientific American. Now, it starts out by Tori Rodriguez explaining that she's sitting with a client and he's sort of untangling his relationship problems with her. Now, I'm not going to go through what the relationship problems were and necessarily what the person was talking about, but what I do want to do is go through the 3 different sections, which is there's an introduction which has 3 points, there's meaningful misery which has 5 points, and then there's accepting pain which has another 3 points. And it's all about how we can use the negative emotion. So this is what or how she was using all of his relationship problems and then sort of reflecting them back and helping him understand it in a different way. So point number 1, a crucial goal in therapy is to learn to acknowledge and express a full range of emotions. So as I've mentioned, there are coaches and people and therapists out there that are trying to say we must be positive all the time, we must be upbeat, try and keep away from negative, so on and so forth. But what we have to understand, or at least acknowledge, is that we have a full range. And then point number 2 is, although positive emotions are worth cultivating, problems arise when people start believing they must be upbeat all the time. So one simple thing, which we'll talk about briefly later, is complacency. If you're becoming too positive, you might get carried away, you get complacent, and then that has its negative effects. So we have to understand that there are negative effects of being too positive. But what we also have to understand is that we can try and find positives within the negatives as well. So you find the opposing in the negative, and you find the opposing in the positive as well. So point number 3 is, in fact, anger and sadness are an important part of life, and new research shows that experiencing and accepting such emotions are vital to our mental health. So the big part in that is accepting such emotions. If we can accept they're there, we won't get so far down because we aren't expecting to be upbeat all the time. We know that there are times when we're upbeat and then there's times when we're downbeat, and we need to be able to use those to our best advantage. So as we move on, we move into meaningful misery, which we have another 5 points. And point number 1 is positive thoughts and emotions can of course be beneficial to mental health. Taken to an extreme, however, that definition is not congruent with the messiness of real life. In addition, people's outlook can become so rosy that they ignore the dangers or become complacent, as I've mentioned. So they can get a little bit carried away, they can miss certain things that are happening in their life, and then all of a sudden that thing becomes a major part of their life, and they then see it, and it then becomes negative. And it's not that that was negative just now, but it was negative before when they were being positive as well. So it's understanding that it's going on all the time, it just depends where our focus lies. Number 2 is remember one of the primary reasons we have emotions in the first place is to help us evaluate experiences. And that's a big part of being able to use it to your best advantage, is being able to evaluate, am I becoming too positive? Okay, what do I need to watch out for? Am I becoming too negative? Okay, well, where are the lessons here? What can I take from this experience? How can I use this experience to my best advantage? Point number 3, taking the good and the bad together may detoxify the bad experiences, allowing you to make meaning out of them in a way that supports psychological well-being. So what we're looking for there is being able to see both of them. Find the good in the bad and the bad in the good, and allowing those experiences and take the meaning from it so we can obviously keep ourselves on a more moderate psychological level. So we're not too up, we're not too down. We just find that moderate fluctuation in our emotions. Point number 4, bad feelings can be vital clues that a health issue, relationship, or other important matter needs attention. So it could be just trying to feed back. This, if it's a person being negative towards you, it could just be that you're not paying them any attention, for example. Or if it's a health issue, it might be that you find out that you're deficient in a certain vitamin or mineral. So it might be just a simple symptom that comes up to say, I'm just deficient here. If you then start taking that vitamin or mineral, the symptom goes away. So it could just be something as simple as that. And point number 5, similar findings from a 2010 study suggest that pushing back negative emotions could spawn more emotional overeating than simply recognizing that you were just upset or agitated or just a bit downbeat at the time. So it's very much making sure that we know where we are with our emotions. We keep them in check. So part number 3, which was accepting pain, there are another 3 points. And number 1 is instead of backing away from negative emotions, accept them. We've mentioned that in each of the 2 previous sections. We must accept that we have negative emotions. We must accept that we have positive emotions, and be able to, again, to use them as best we can. If the emotion is overwhelming, you may want to express how you feel in a journal or to another person. So it's very much now what we're starting to do is trying to make sense of it. So we're not just accepting that it's there. We're now starting to see if we can make sense of it in a possibly a more logical way. Because a lot of people, when they think about emotions, it overwhelms them. It takes sort of their logic out of the equation, and then as soon as it passes, they just get on with life. Whereas what we're trying to say is try and make sense of it. So point number 3, it's impossible to avoid negative emotions altogether, because to live is to experience setbacks, conflicts, drawbacks, negative things. So learning how to cope with these emotions is the key. And that's what we are trying to do with that journal. Is we start writing things down, we become more logical about them, we are then able to manage them a lot better. So I guess the final part is we'll just look at, now this wasn't necessarily in the article in Scientific American, but it's just a few questions. If you are writing this journal, or if you are experiencing a certain situation when you're sat in the car, it might just be something that you can just run in your mind or run on a piece of paper with a pen, to be able to try and just orientate yourself and see if you can make the best of the situation, or make the best of the person or that experience that you're having. So it might be, if we are frustrated, annoyed by a situation, person, or experience, did you have an unrealistic expectation on any of those three? So if it was a goal that you were setting, was that unrealistic? So the first two questions, did you have an experience or situation or person that you put an unrealistic expectation on? Or did you set a goal that was unrealistic? Because what it might be saying is, if a person's getting annoyed at you, it might be because you've just set an unrealistic expectation on them to be a certain way, and you need to think, well, okay, they aren't that person, they aren't going to be that person. Maybe I just need to be more realistic in how I think that person should be acting or is acting. Or how can I perceive how that person is acting and be able to use it better? The question number 3 is, where are the positives? So as I've mentioned before, finding there are positives in negatives, it's just we've got to find them. So where are they? Number 4, what would be the drawbacks if that person or goal met your expectations? So if that goal that you set, you achieved it, what would be the drawbacks? Or if that person always agreed with you, never talked back to you, what again would be the drawbacks? Because if they never talk back to you, you might not learn that lesson that you need to learn. You might just be, you hear about it a lot with yes people. So they just go around, oh yes, of course, yes, just do that, yes, just do that, no problem. Similar with parents and children. If you've got a parent that just keeps saying yes to the child, yes, have this, yes, take that, you can see they then start to become entitled, spoil, and that's where the whole thing spoiled brat comes from, because they were given so much, and then they just expect. And that could be a drawback that comes out of, if you met a goal, you might just then expect. So it could be something like that. Question 5. What lessons are they trying to teach us? So what lesson is that situation, person, or experience trying to teach you? Is it a common thing that keeps coming up? Is it in many different people in your life? Do you keep having situations repeat itself? Start to think about those. Is what is that lesson trying to teach me? Question 6 is, what detail might we have left out? So if it's a goal that you're trying to meet, for example, and you've got you've set a goal that's far too unrealistic. You didn't realize it at the time, but you realize that you haven't achieved that goal. Now, what might be the detail that you left out and the reason that you didn't get there? Well, it was because I was missing this part, or it was because I didn't do this. So if I do that, that helps me move further towards that goal. So it might not be that it's an unrealistic goal that you can't achieve. It might just be that you just left 1 or 2 of the steps out to reaching it, and you need to go back, revise what you were doing, and then start again, if that makes sense. So they're not the normal questions that you might ask yourself. They do take a little bit of thought process to be able to make sense of, but they are useful, and you might gain something from those. So what we have to understand is that, 1, there are positive and negative emotions out there. We aren't going to get rid of them. And number 2, what we have to do, accept that they are there and start using them to our best advantage. And then number 3 is thinking about, was it unrealistic? Where are the positives? What's it trying to teach us? What were the drawbacks if that goal is met, or if that person is the way we want them to be? What's it trying to teach us? And what detail might we have left out in order to try and achieve the goal that we wanted? So there's a lot to take in there. So if you want to listen to this episode a few times, then please do. By all means, it's going to be on online for forever, or as long as I keep it up there, which I don't see any time in taking it away. But yeah, hopefully it's been helpful, and hopefully you can start to use it to your best advantage, and then keep managing your emotions, keep managing the positives and the negatives within the positives, and so on and so forth. So many thanks for listening. Hopefully this has been useful. Hopefully you've taken some nuggets from it. So my name is Chris. I will speak to you next week in episode 14.